Hi, Sean.
Hello. Okay, so for the people in Inform Planet Radio, I have my guest online right now. So his name is Thomas Sheridan. My name is Jean-François. I'll be your host for the next 50 minutes. Uh, Thomas has other obligations after that, so we're going to get right to it. So, Thomas Sheridan, thank you so much for accepting this invitation on Inform Planet Radio.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Jean-François. Thank you for asking.
Okay. Before we get on the subject of the psychopaths that rule the world, I'd like to have your input on the crisis in Paris, the attack on the Charlie Hebdo in Paris. What is your take on this?
Well, so far, I haven't seen enough information on it. You know, it's just there seems to be a lot of people have made their minds up it's a false flag based on a few things that seem strange, mainly the shot missing the policeman's head and hitting the pavement, and a few other things. And people are quite right to point out and state that they've used this event to ramp up their classic psychopathic control grid. But as it stands so far, I personally haven't seen enough evidence to believe it's a false flag. And I'm not one of these people who jumps immediately on something just because that's where all the energy is going in this alternative movement. I am not a truther. I am not working on any team. I'm a completely independent person, and my opinions are my own. And I'm not interested in winning popularity battles or being with like what's perceived as what's the winning team in the alternative movement. I simply, as it stands, do not see enough information for it to be a false flag. Yes, I absolutely know false flags have to take place. The CIA have been caught with their knickers down a good few times doing them. In this particular case, it just seems to be what it is, with the information I'm going on thus far. If something else came out, just to point out that this was done by the intelligence services, absolutely, I would then look at that seriously, and if that was the conclusion, I would say it. But right now, I'm not buying into anything other than the very limited information on what happened on the day. It does not suggest anything definite one way or the other. So for now, in a default position, I'm going with it probably was a terrorist attack until something else comes out.
Okay, so we'll get right on the subject: the psychopaths that rule the world. I mean, you've written a couple of books, and it's really interesting. And we'll give your information a little later, but. How come most leaders on this planet are psychopaths? I mean, you look at the Bush dynasty and the Tony Blairs and Cameron. These guys are, it's insane. They're completely insane. How come we have that?
Well, I think Frank Herbert, who wrote the novel Dune, had a passage in the novel where he stated that pathological entities, beings, whether they're either human beings or aliens on other worlds, are drawn, this is in the novel now, are drawn to positions of power in much the same way iron filings are drawn towards a magnet. There's a magnetism that drives pathological individuals towards positions of power. Unfortunately, as it stands, this is exactly what's going on in this world. Even if they're not psychopaths, and the ones you mentioned, such as the Bush family and Tony Blair, are excellent examples, along with the likes of Kissinger, Netanyahu in Israel, and many, many others. These people, and Putin in Russia too, these people are clearly psychopathic in how they behave and how they think and how they function. How Netanyahu, who can bomb the shit out of Gaza, condemning marching in a peace rally in Paris, shows you what these creatures are like. Now, The hypocrisy means nothing to them because they're not like us, they're different. Why they go into positions of power? Quite simply because the entire system is geared towards helping them get there. It's rigged towards them. People say things like, oh, societies are rigged for Freemasons to get into power and so on. Yes, there are elements of things like that are true, but more than anything else, society is rigged, hardwired, to put psychopathic, cold-blooded, compassionless individuals in positions of power. The whole system is rotten from the bottom to the top, and that's the problem.
Okay, so who are the psychopaths behind these psychopaths? I mean, there is a sort of a elite on top of everybody, but who are these people? Are we talking about secret societies, or are we talking about the Vatican Jesuits that are on top of everything, or who decides what, or who decides who gets to be in power?
I think it's all those things. I think it's all of them. To me, in my own work, the highest I have actually come to in terms of realization of the ultimate puppet masters is the European royalty. And people think that they're just symbolic roles, but they're not. If you start looking at the history of European royalty, and in particular the Germanic Prussian Anglo-Franco, Anglo-Romano royalty, they're still incredibly powerful, running major corporations, think tanks and public bodies out of places such as Switzerland. Just because they're not sitting on a throne so much anymore, wielding their golden staff and a crown on their head. Most of them, the really hard, powerful ones, are sitting in the CEO boardrooms of some of the world's largest corporations, and they're on the think tanks of some of the biggest foundations, such as the Bilderbergs. It's really not that hard. There is no, to me, I've seen no. Now there are, secret, nods and winks and under the table deals, as they call them, that really control the system and how it happens. But for me, it's at the moment the highest ones I can actually physically point fingers towards and say, yeah, they have tremendous power because they've managed to survive 2 world wars, the Cold War, and when everything else was ruined, where millions and millions of people were wiped off the face of the earth. These same people have managed to hold on to their power, and they're still enjoying power, and they're still at the very top. And the only ones that tick those criteria off are the European royal families. They have been amazingly resilient because they're at the top of it all.
I see. So above the royalty, there's nobody?
There could be. There could be some very deep. I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into anything, but there could be, for all we know, some kind of pathological force in consciousness, that's causing them to be like this. Some kind of I don't talk too much about this stuff, but I'm totally open to the belief that there could be something like a kind of an infection of consciousness that actually runs through these people. And this is why they're obsessed with inbreeding. This is why they're obsessed with keeping their bloodlines pure. This is why they keep it all in the family. I really don't know. I can't put my finger on that and say it's yes or nothing. But I wouldn't be adverse to the idea that there is some kind of, shall we say, ghost in that machine.
Okay. So these world leaders that are groomed to become leaders, are they psychopaths before they're even chosen, or are they groomed and trained and become psychopaths afterward?
Well, it's 2 different things. There are purebred psychopathic individuals, and they appear in all walks of life, and in all social classes, and in all ethnic groups, and all religions. They're born with a very different brain and neurological process. If you stick them underneath an fMRI scan, you will see that the frontal part of their brains are based, the frontal part of conditions, the higher human brains, the higher aspects of their humanity, along with their limbic systems, are simply switched off. They're not damaged, they're not broken, they're not missing. Everything is there. They use the more base sort of like survival, fight or flight aspects of their brain. It's selfishness beyond selfishness, and there's no compassion for other human beings. And if they want something, they will destroy another person's life without thinking about it. They will destroy another person's existence, reputation, anything, just to get what they want, just for even something small. They will kill if they have to. They will destroy. They will manipulate. Incredible manipulators of people. Now there's them. They're the natural born pure psychopath. They are literally practically a different species on this planet. On top of that, you would have what I call proto-psychopaths, or some people would call them secondary psychopaths, where these would be people who are probably born normal like the rest of us, but certain factors. Now, there's two ways of looking at this. Accidental factors. So suppose they were raised in a family where there was tremendous abuse. Say the father was an alcoholic and a paedophile, or he beat them up. Say they were brought up in a sectarian war zone. Say they were brought up in an orphanage where the nuns or the priests buggered them. Well, this would make them very dark people with tremendous problems in their lives, and they would lash out, and they would become proto-psychopathic. They would behave, they have a very nihilistic attitude to the world. It's kill or be killed, screw them, I'm out for myself, the world's a horrible place. But those people are not naturally evil. They've been made that way. They stick their brains under an fMRI scan, their brain patterns are exactly the same as anyone else. They're damaged people. Now, where this really gets interesting is how the elites actually cultivate this among their own children. This is why they send them to these kinds of boarding schools in England, where they're buggered by the older boys in the shower, where they're beaten totally, where they're sent on things like fox hunting when they're very, very young, and they witness an animal being torn asunder during this kind of bizarre ritual in the countryside, and then the blood is taken from the fox, who's still only seconds dead and still filled with the adrenaline, and wiped on their faces in a ritual called blooding. Now, this makes these people grow up damaged, purposely damaged in a different way, because they've been actually engineered by their families to be like this. So that's, they say they bring out almost kind of like base, kind of animalistic qualities in them, while they're behind this refined exterior. So on the exterior, they can discuss philosophy and they can discuss art. They can be erudite and rather charming. But when it comes down to family business, such as their, taking care of the royal family and so on like that, they will think nothing of sending people off to be murdered in their millions if they have to. So they'd be protos. But you would get purebred psychopaths within these royal families. Certainly Prince Philip of the British royal family, the Queen's husband, he definitely seems to have those traits, and so did also Earl Louis Mountbatten. So they do show up naturally as well. But even if they don't, they will be engineered into them, because the survival of this pathological entity within this ruling family must be kept alive at all costs, even if that means destroying the actual decency within their own children. And they do it. And it's been going on for centuries.
Okay. So, but is there a way to stop this? I mean, this is insane. Humanity needs to get out of this mess. How can we get rid of the problem? Can we?
I don't know if we can, given the level that we're at the moment. You see, it's very nice to think that we would rise up one day and overthrow them, but the chances are that the people who would be leading us to overthrow them would be other psychopaths after their job. This is why they call it revolution. It only revolves back to the same mess you started with. Because the same monsters, the same manipulators will be at the top pulling the strings. My personal opinion is that basically there's no way of taking them down that we can currently call upon. They have all the power, all the money, all the media, all the weaponry. We're nothing. My philosophy towards this, whether you work with a psychopath or you were in a relationship with one, or your boss was one, or even your government is one, my philosophy is no contact ever again. Have nothing to do with them. Do not acknowledge them. Do not feed them energy, because even trying to take them down, they love that, because you're giving their attention to them. What they're like is that they feed off the energy we give them. They don't care if we hate their guts. Henry Kissinger is perfectly happy that hundreds of millions of people all over the world hate his guts. He's fine with that. Once they're paying him attention. When we stop taking and I don't mean in a new age way by taking our focus off. I'm talking that we don't feed them. We do not feed their systems. We do not feed their structures. We do not live in fear of them. We do not live in, and we ignore them. Like someone contacted me today, and it sounded like he was basically hassled by a low-end psychopath on the street, and this guy was basically trying to, I don't know, make kind of sexual and kind of violent overtones towards him when he was coming back from a nightclub. And he said that he got rid of this guy who he said had those crazy psychopathic eyes. He said he got rid of him by just walking on almost aloof. And then the guy left him alone. Where if he had have turned around and said, listen, you buddy, get off my ass, that psychopath would have loved that and taken it to the next level. So we have to be very careful how we deal with them. My attitude is, look, I don't have any answers to anything in this life, okay? I'm just like an ordinary Irish guy living here. I have a regular job like other people. I'm trying to survive like anyone else. I have no grand plans or no ideas. All I can do is to tell people, look, if you're aware of them, don't feed them. And that's important in so many things. It's very easy for them to suck the energy out of us, to suck us like an orange and suck us dry. Like even what you mentioned at the beginning about the Paris thing, it's very easy for us to, they love it that one side says it's a false flag and the other side says it's not a false flag. And then they want the two sides to savage one another. And they're sitting there laughing their asses off at all of us. And that's why it's very important not to get whipped up into hype and hysteria, because psychopaths are very good at manipulating a society's true hype and true hysteria. So my attitude is we all have to, get this information and then learn to grow up. And not to feed them anymore. When something appalling goes down that they're behind, we acknowledge it, we accept it, we educate people about it, but we do not get into a state where we put them in a position of power by saying, look at all the power they have. They're so in danger, we're such slaves to them. Like, I don't even like that expression that you use, psychopaths rule the world. A friend of mine used a better one. It's called psychopaths in charge. That just basically sums it up better for me. They're in charge for now. You don't have the same boss forever. We won't have the same psychopaths forever. We can take them down by not engaging with them, but it's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in our lifetimes. These people have taken hundreds of years to get into power, and it's probably going to take that long to get them out.
So if everyone on the planet would refuse their rules of engagement, their power is basically gone. But to change these rules of engagement, that takes a lot of unity. I would say. Thomas, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry, I had my mic turned off. To take these people out of the equation, we're going to need to tell them that we don't accept their rules of engagement anymore, and that's going to take a lot of unity. But I don't know if it's possible.
It's not possible because it's not possible in the current state that humanity is in. Because people only, most people care about X Factor and American Idol and all these game shows and sports, and they care more. There's more human beings on this earth will be focused on the Super Bowl halftime ritual or the opening ceremony of the Olympics or the World Cup than they'll ever put that same passion and energy into something like this. It's humanity is a damaged species. We have to start looking at our fellow human beings as not stupid sheeple who are like following the Matrix. We have to start looking at them as almost like disabled people. Sorry, war veterans, people who've been damaged in wars, refugees. They can't think straight. It's very difficult for human beings to think straight anymore, especially now in this kind of like technotronic age where their senses are completely bombarded 24/7, where there's tremendous psychic interference, where there's tremendous distraction, confusion and everything. It's difficult. We can only do it with the people we know. and the people were in our own immediate circle. And if you can, it's basically our personal journey. I mean, it's the classic story of ancient Greece or ancient classical literature, and actually exists in every single canon of mythology from North America to Asia to Europe. It's the hero's personal journey. Only you as yourself, or me as myself, can actually deal with the psychopaths in charge. Only we can. Really, realistically, if we inspire somebody else to do the same, that's why you make this show, that's why I've written a couple of books, that's great, that's good, fantastic, wonderful, but it's not a guarantee. We have to understand that we're up against phenomenal forces. We're really up. It's almost like this planet is under control by an alien powerful army. I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying that's what's really. And we, the human beings, are kept simple and stupid, like the animals in a farm or a cage, who get the light switch. Like the chickens in a factory farm, where the lights are switched on to make them think it's daytime, then they switch it off to make it think it's nighttime. So they can speed up their growing cycles. That's what we're like. And it's an individual journey. I see absolutely no hope of a mass awakening. I've always believed that was nonsense from day one. That's just the 100 Monkey is out on Black Friday trying to get a TV for $100. That's where the 100 Monkey is. There is no hope of a mass awakening that I see. And when we ever come close, they always steal it from us. The current person they're using to steal it from us is Russell Brand. He's now scooped up all the people who are waking up in the last 5-6 years, and now he has them all into socialism and stuff like that. This is what they do. The oldest trick. Where again, you see, psychopaths have no wisdom. Psychopaths have no great intellectual capacities or ability to create. But what they are is extremely devious. If you think you've outsmarted a psychopath, I can tell you that they're already 10 steps ahead of you. And that's what we're dealing with on a mass scale.
Is there any hope for humanity here? I mean, are we heading for self-destruction, or are we going to be able to get rid of these psychopaths?
To me, it's not that there's no hope for humanity, but I think there's always hope. And there's always hope for the individual. And if you can wake yourself up and stop engaging with them and stop falling for their lies and nonsense, and your other people you know and love and your friends, and you can wake up, that's enough. If we could do enough of those people, maybe something could happen one day. But I'm not being negative about it in the terms of saying, we're finished and we're screwed. Life is amazing. My attitude is spite the bastards. Spite them. Enjoy your life. Live a good life. Create, be happy, fall in love, make babies, do what you want to do. Don't worry about it. See, I've got to the stage now when something happens in a foreign country, I don't care really that much anymore. It's not that I don't have compassion for the people who are suffering. It's I can't do nothing about it anymore. I can do nothing about the Middle East. I can do nothing about Congo. I can do nothing about anything in those places except feed my energy to the media, both the mass media and the alternative media. And that's stealing that precious energy that all of us as individuals need in our own lives, in our own families, and in our own communities. The media has been a terrible double-edged sword. It's both educated, but it's also robbed us of our own potential to spite them by living a good life. And that's really what we have to do, is live a good life. I'm not interested in anyone who has a grand plan or a grand vision or a new constitution or a great idea to get rid of them. I'm not interested in that at all. What interests me now in dealing with the psychopathic control grid, as I call it, is people who are basically moving into their own sort of creative insurgency, their own kind of local anarchy among themselves, among their friends, among their family, as extended on the internet, extended networks on the internet, because I think that is the lifeboat. Where, that's the lifeboat. The Titanic is going down, but there's still plenty of lifeboats. And while those lifeboats are there, I'm going to grab one, and I'm going to get all the people I love and care to try and grab one too. And that's what I see as the way out.
Oh, interesting. It's very, very interesting what you're saying. But I still come back to the rules of engagement. I mean, if we are to deny them any form of power, we need to, to communicate our intentions, not to follow their wishes, or to not play their games, because actually what they're selling us is perceptions.
Yeah, very much so.
But if maybe one of the ways would be to take control of every media outlet on this planet, and if we do that, they have no way to continue the brainwashing of the masses.
That's a great one. That's an excellent way of doing it, because that's one of the other lifeboats we have. And we'll never take over their media, but what we can do is create our own media and become the main media. That's definitely an option that's still open to us. Because if you look at TV viewing, the numbers have collapsed in recent times. A lot of people don't watch TV religiously anymore. Those days are kind of over, where they sit in front of the idiot box and watch whatever came up next, regardless of if they were interested or not. I notice a lot more people are much more selective. I'm talking about ordinary, everyday people in their TV viewing, and that's that's an opportunity for us to grab them. Now, how will we grab them? Well, we can't be going around screaming, 911 is an inside job. All vaccines were created by the New World Order to kill us, and that kind of thing. That's not going to happen. Okay, that'll only alienate people. Or Paris is an inside job. Look at this, and that's only going to make us look crazy. Okay, even if those things have truth to them. What we have to do is learn by their rules of engagement. How did they get inside our heads? They did it with things like entertainment. What we need are filmmakers, playwrights, actors, singers, musicians, rappers, artists, poets, filmmakers especially people that can do comedy. Huge. All my life, I've been fighting against fascists and stuff using comedy, and comedy can take down a lot. The jester is a great one to take down the king, because she's ultimately the one who calls out the fact that the emperor has no clothes. That has not even been tapped into in this scene, and when someone like me does it, it's taken as proof that I'm not, Thomas Sheridan does stand-up comedy, he's evil, he's not like spiritual. This is the kind of lunatics we have within our own communities and our own media as well. We have to stop all this nonsense. We have to learn we have to train the new generation of stand-up comedians to stand up there and talk about these kind of subjects, like the things we talk about, like GMOs and the illegal wars and all this kind of thing, and the banking system, and do it humorously, because that's where you win people. I've done comedy shows in front of 300-400 people, and I've spoke about what I've been speaking about here tonight, but doing it through funny jokes and adult humor. And guess what? At the end, not one of them could come up to me and say, "You're a nutcase." Everyone came up to me at the end and said, "Shit, that was funny. That was really fucking funny." Sorry, of course. It was really funny. And you really made me think about, those guys in Wall Street, they are like serial killers. And that's the way to do it. That's the way to use their media against them. Stop this living in fear of them and start laughing at them. We need to all bring out that kind of jester spirit in us, because something, that's what will win the majority over to us. So you're right about that. I totally agree, Jean-Francois. That is a great card. That's one of our lifeboats. Create our own media. Not only informs, but also entertains. The entertaining is a big aspect of how I deliver myself. And when I do talks, when I go out there and do lectures, I'm always throwing in jokes. I'm always entertaining people on my own radio show. It's a big thing, because you know what? It breaks down barriers between us and the mainstream. And once we break down those barriers between us and the mainstream, we have ears that are listening and eyes that are watching, finally.
Okay, so to create our own media, and to let go of the mainstream media and all of their their shows, and like X Factor or American Idol or whatever you want. I mean, we could create our own network of media to entertain and to inform.
Yeah.
And we could maybe encourage people, to have a different output or a different view on whatever the TV will show them. But that takes a lot of education and a lot of speakers like you that will let the people know how the things work.
Unfortunately, it takes money. That's the real problem. Like if I won the lotto tomorrow and made the euro or a lot of money on the lotto tomorrow, I would set up something like, instead of American Idol, something like Freedom Idol. And I'd have a talent show that would have people that, once they had a conscious approach to their art, would be able to come in and entertain people. And I wouldn't care if I didn't have a TV station and set up my own internet network. I'd do it on YouTube. I would just do it just as that alternative. And see, the problem is they have the money. The money is the problem. There's an awful lot of truth to that line that Tony Montana said in Scarface, where his friend is trying to get the American beautiful girl at the beach, and he says, "First we get the money, then we get the power, then we get the woman." And that was wisdom, because he was showing, unfortunately, that's the system we're in. What we need, and we don't have it, are people like Bill Gates in this scene, or Bono's, or someone. There has to be someone out there who's woken up, who's very wealthy, who can put money into people who can make an alternative media that will capture the mainstream. And that's if we had that, we could make an enormous difference. Although they'd probably kill someone that tried to do that. But you see, they have all the chips too. But we do have that opportunity. We can start out small, but we need to take a page out of their book by creating a something that's appealing to them, to the masses, with this information, or as many people as we can get, and then entertain them, and then get them thinking, and do to them what the psychopaths in charge have done to us. Like I said, it can be done. I hope and I pray it is done one day. And I do have faith that there's enough human beings out there that could try and do this. I mean, most of the people I'm dealing with now are playwrights, filmmakers. I mean, I'm talking about people that are actually in the mainstream, musicians, and they do exist out there, but they're at the low end. They're not ones that have the real Hollywood power or the real, BBC level power. But we've got them. I've got a few already. I've got myself an army of creators and counterinsurgency folks. All it lacks is the infrastructure to bring them together, or someone else to bring them together. But we have the talent in this alternative scene. We have absolutely no doubt about that. What we got to do now is introduce that talent and that ability to counter-insurgency, their entertainment military complex, with our own entertainment consciousness complex, and that would be a real weapon we could fight with.
Okay, so basically, if I understand correctly, we just give those psychopaths a taste of their own medicine by creating our own networks of media and entertainment.
That's one of the ways, and also educating about psychopathology. Again, it's very well known now. The subject was no one was talking about it when I first started out. Well, very few, not to the level of in the alternative anyway. And then now everyone's talking about it. Everyone's using the term psychopaths here, that, and there. So it just goes to show you that if myself and a few other nobodies like me can actually make that change, where now thousands and thousands of people all over the world are talking about what psychopaths being in government and being in corporations, well, that shows you the power of a good idea. The power, people recognize the truth when they see it, and people recognize bullshit when they see it. And if you deliver bullshit on the truth will always win out, because that will be the one that will come screaming through. Because the truth doesn't need a smear campaign to keep it going. The truth doesn't need hatred or bigotry or paranoia or fear to keep it going. The truth is what it is. Something is either on or off, positive or negative. It's either nothing or one. That's as simple as that. And if we deliver, that's why the message of the Psychopaths in Charge has really reached people, is because it's a simple, basic message. That was what my work was about, was to take all this when I discovered it, like I tell you, I'm not joking, when I first discovered all about this stuff in the mid-90s, mainly as a result of reading books on serial killers, and then the penny started to drop that this is what is running the big banks and the big organizations. I was I was very annoyed, because I was thinking to myself, how come I was never told this in school? This would have saved me so much personal and social pain in my life, and millions of other people as well. How come we were never told that there are people on this earth who prey upon us? And let me tell you, they're not always in positions of power. They're everywhere. They're from the guy sweeping the street, all the way to the woman who works in the local hairdressing salon, all the way to the local priest, rabbi, or whatever, or guru, or cult leader. They're everywhere. Okay, they're everywhere. And if we knew about these things when we were growing up, our lives would have been so much more easier. But they've deliberately kept this information about the psychopaths from us. Even though there was hard, good science, I mean, excellent science, going right back to the 1940s to show us that there are different subspecies of human beings on this earth that are parasitic and prey upon the rest of us. And even as far back as the 1940s, and even before that, there was some very good profiling of these people that were called, people that were moral imbeciles, was one of the terms they used for them. And it was well known, and yet it was never. There's two things that happened. One, they always made it sound like they either didn't exist, and if they did exist, it was only poor people who were like that. And they never, ever would ever point to someone like Cecil Rhodes or a Winston Churchill, or even a Joseph Stalin for that matter, and say, oh, he was a psychopath. They would never do that. It was always an assumption that only the poor people were psychopaths. The poorest people in society were psychopaths. And that was how they got away with it for years. And when I wrote Puzzling People back in 2010, 2011, whenever it was, when it came out, I wanted to take all this stuff and put it in a very easy to understand form that people could actually use as a kind of a guidebook. And that's why it struck people so strongly, is because it just say to them, it is simple. It's not complex. It's very, very simple. You can spend all the time in the world talking about science. You can spend all the world talking about genetics. You can spend all the time in the world about this. It doesn't matter. It's like if you go onto the jungle and there's a dangerous predator out there, you want to know where this predator lives, how it hunts, and how it will possibly find you, and then how to escape from it. You do not need to know the biological and genetic history of this predator and all the other kind of aspects in the natural science and history behind it. You don't have to know that. I mean, it's good. If you want to go there, great. In reality, see, you don't have to be a marine biologist to know that sharks are dangerous. And that's my great white sharks are dangerous when you're swimming in the water near them. And that's my philosophy of the psychopaths. You don't have to be an expert or have a PhD in neuroscience to know that psychopaths are dangerous. And that's why I think my work has struck a chord with a lot of people, because of that simplicity. And there's an example now of what you said about getting our own media. I created my own media. I took this even within the alternative, what few people were dealing with psychopathology back then, there was a whole lot of nonsense in it. They were piling science upon psychobabble upon science, still to try and make the point, when in reality it was a very, very simple idea. And even in my own books, I put very simple identification methods, very simple ways of recovery, real life stories about ordinary people, and I interspersed a bit of humor, a bit of pathos, and a bit of history and a bit of this and the other, and it just was a basic introduction to why the world is messed up and why your life could be messed up and how to get the hell out of it. And that's what we need. We need more simplicity like that, straightforward things. And within this alternative media, there's a tremendous self-destructive nature in that people tend to overanalyze things, okay? They tend to overanalyze it. So, you take something like 9/11. After all these years, people are still looking at sparks and explosions and all this kind of other thing. The minutiae of it, it doesn't matter. the fact is that whatever happened that day led to a war that cost the lives of about 2 million people in the Middle East and has put us into a police state. That's all that matters. Going back and harboring on the past forever doesn't matter. The process is now, this is the mess we're in. How do we get out of this going forward? But the psychopaths in charge want you lost in the past. They want you lost in the minutiae of detail, because as they're snapping their fingers over here and you're looking, what they're really doing is the other hand over here doing something else. So we have to get wise to their methods. When I'm now firmly convinced that a lot of the alternative media is now run through the intelligence services. I don't say that the actual alternative media or the presenters or people themselves are the intelligence services, but I do believe that agents from both sides are flooded things like social media, both fighting their own little battle, and it's all about each one trying to win the conscience, but ultimately, it doesn't matter if they're coming from one side or the other, they're still derailing us from keeping our eyes on the prize. We should be moving forward. Just like a psychopath does in a relationship, it stops you from keeping your eyes on who you are, what you're about, and what your life story is. The ones at the top do the same thing as well. They want you bogged down in minutiae, divide and conquer, factions, fighting among one another, just like a psychopathic boss has the members of the company all afraid of each other or run smear campaigns, just like a psychopathic cult leader has all the people in the cult all afraid of each other and will make each one feel the special one when in reality they're stabbing in the back to someone else. That kind of thing. That's how they work. We have to learn not to be so easily flattered, so easily distracted, and so easily put into minuscule, microscopic chaos wars when we're missing the bigger picture, because that's how the psychopaths in charge function.
I see. So I don't know. On me, I'm very optimistic. I think that we'll probably take back our power. And I remember that interview you had in company of John Lash a couple of years back. And you did a two-part series on the subject, and I believe that we do have hope for a better world, a better future, and we'll have to take things in our own hands. I mean, we can't expect a divine intervention or whatever whatever you want to call it, but I do believe that we do have the power to take back our power, and because to me the 9/11 event really triggered this. It was the start of an awakening. The consciousness, the mass consciousness, just it raised a few notches at that moment, and the more we go in time, the more people are informed, and I think it's exponential. And I think that maybe we will be, in our lifetime, we'll be able to reverse all of the damages that these psychopaths have done to us. But that's just my opinion.
No, and you keep that opinion. That's good for you to feel that way. I'm optimistic too. I'm optimistic about the people like myself and others who are saying, "To hell with that. I'm going to live my life regardless and continue to spread this." I'm optimistic about that. But one of the things that gives me hope is that we have been beating them for a long, long time, or at least we've been taking them down bit by bit. Let's look at an example of that. 100 years ago, 9-year-olds were going down the mines. People were working 7-day weeks. Women had no rights. They were just, there was all kinds of things like that. People lived in dire poverty, even in Western countries. What did our grandparents and great-grandparents do? They got organized. They joined unions. Now, unions probably don't serve the same function anymore, but back then they formed a very important one. They got organized, and they said to the big bosses, the ones who owned the coal mines or the factories or the steel mills, "We're not going to work today." And our ancestors, and we should honor them, because one of the things we don't do in the West is we don't honor our ancestors in the same way indigenous people like the Native Americans or the Mexicans or the Indians or the Asians do. We don't do that. And we have to start, like, the next time, then people have to start recognizing the sacrifices our ancestors made for us. The next time you're sick, one of us is sick, and you get a paid sick day off work, that didn't happen because of the psychopaths in charge 100 years ago doing it, or 50 years ago, out of the goodness of their hearts. That happened because our great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents stood on the front line and took bullets and tear gas. That's what happened. And didn't go to work, and then eventually, the owner of the factory or the mill or the coal mine had to give in. That's how our ancestors in the past, have gotten us to this point. We've been winning we don't send 9-year-olds up the chimney anymore. To sweep chimneys. We don't send them down mines. We have a 40-hour working week. It's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than when our parents our great-great-great-grandparents used to live like that, working out on the farms, and then going back to a cold, damp house in the evening to eat a few potatoes or maybe a piece of butter or buttermilk if they were lucky. And so we have a legacy of beating them. We do. We've done it. And that's what I say we continue doing, that we don't play into them. No contact. Our ancestors who stood up against the industrialists, against the Rockefellers and so on, against all those types, they were doing no contact ever again. No, I'm not having any contact down your coal mine with the coal. No, I'm not having any contact in your factory, Henry Ford, working these slave labor shifts and so on. And that's the way we do it. And human beings, human beings are an interesting bunch. They will take a lot of abuse for so long, and then, as you says, there's a slight raise in consciousness, and that switches them on. So it's happened again in the last 10 years or so. Good. It's happened again. Good. We have to look back at our ancestors and honor their struggle against the psychopathic control grid, and in a different age going forward, carry that with us. So that's why I always say it's a piecemeal thing. It's going to happen in bits and pieces, but we already have a history of winning concessions on them when our ancestor says, no, you're not doing this to me.
It's totally amazing. Now I truly get, what you want to say, and I'm going to have to re-listen to this because the information you just provided was just totally amazing. So we could maybe on a closing note here, because we're coming up to the 15-minute mark in about 2 minutes. Remind us of your website, Thomas.
My website, Jean-Francois, is thomassheridanarts.com. And that you can get to all my other blogs and my media websites through then. If people want to have a quick introduction to the psychopathic stuff, go to Thomas Sheridan Arts on YouTube, and I have literally it must be dozens and dozens of videos at this point explaining what this thing is we're dealing with and how to deal with it. And that's a good primer for people. And they can get, like, if they want to learn about psychopaths in their own life, in their own world, I have a book called Puzzling People, The Labyrinth of the Psychopath, Puzzling People. You can get that anywhere, Amazon or anywhere you want. And then there's another book called Defeat the Demons, which takes it to the next level, how to deal with psychopathic structures and dealing with them. And again, I do think simply. I do think straightforward. I don't want to be seen as an intellectual. I'm a warrior. I'm a fighter. I'm just a regular working class guy from the north side of Dublin. I don't have any airs and graces. I grew up seeing a lot of injustice in my life, and I wanted a way to help people simply undermine that, and so we can actually have a better quality of life. And that's all my work is about. I want nothing else. I just want that. And that's enough for me. If I reach 10 or 20 people in my life, I'll be delighted with that. because that means there's 10 or 20 people are having a better quality of life than they would have had if they never heard about this stuff. So that's ThomasSheridanArts.com.
Well, thank you very much, Thomas, for accepting our invitation here on Informed Planet Radio.com, and hopefully we'll be able to have another interview in the near future to further discuss, because I feel we haven't really gone deep enough. So this podcast will be available on YouTube, and I will provide also a MP3 link for anybody who wants to download the MP3. Thanks again, Thomas, and talk to you very soon, I hope.
Jean-Francois, like anytime you want to call me back for another interview, just ask, because I know I promised you a little longer for tonight, but I've just had such a busy day. So please don't hesitate if you want to come back and discuss these issues forward. I'd be delighted to.
Okay. Thank you very much, Thomas, and have a great evening.
You too. Thank you. Good night.